There's something almost magical about standing in front of an ancient artifact covered in symbols no living person can read. Imagine running your fingers over the grooves of a clay tablet, feeling the weight of centuries in its markings, knowing that somewhere in those curves and lines lies a message, a story, a lore, a prayer, waiting to be heard again. These forgotten scripts are more than just writing. They're whispers from civilizations long gone, voices silenced by time but not erased, and the most astonishing part. Some of these languages have resisted every attempt to decode them, clinging to their secrets like locked treasure chests with no keys in sight. Take the Voynich Manuscript, for example, a book filled with bizarre illustrations and an alphabet that looks like nothing else on Earth. For over 600 years, it's defied cryptographers, historians, and even wartime codebreakers. Or consider Linear A, the script of the ancient Minoans, which has teased scholars for more than a century with its tantalizing glimpses into a lost world. Why do some languages surrender their meanings to us, like the Rosetta Stone did, while others guard their mysteries so fiercely? The answer lies in the incredible dance between human curiosity and the resilience of the past. This isn't just about solving puzzles, it's about rediscovering entire chapters of human history that have been erased or overlooked. Every undeciphered script is a missing piece in the grand story of who we are. Think about it. What if one of these texts holds the key to a forgotten technology, a lost philosophy, or even a civilization we never knew existed? That's the thrill of this journey. Today, we're diving into the enigma of ancient languages, exploring the brilliant minds who have tried to crack them, the methods that have succeeded and failed, and why, even in the age of artificial intelligence and supercomputers, some scripts still refuse to give up their secrets. So let's step into the world of cryptic symbols and untold stories, because history isn't just written by the winners. Sometimes it's written in codes we're still learning to read. There's an almost irresistible pull to undeciphered scripts, like staring at a locked door with no handle, knowing something incredible might lie on the other side. But why do these ancient codes grip us so fiercely? It's not just the challenge of solving them, it's the desperate hope of hearing a voice that hasn't spoken for thousands of years. Picture this: Linear A, the script of Crete's Minoan civilization, survives on clay tablets and stone seals, yet no one alive today understands its words. Were they tax records, love poems, sacred hymns? The silence is maddening because every untranslated symbol is a conversation cut short by time. Then there's Rongorongo, the enigmatic script of Easter Island, carved into wooden tablets by a society that left no other written records. The symbols resemble birds, plants, and figures in motion, but their meaning is as elusive as the island's famous statues. Some researchers think it might be proto-writing, a halfway step between art and language, while others believe it holds the islanders' lost history. But without a bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone, these theories remain shadows on a cave wall. What makes decipherment so uniquely difficult? Imagine trying to solve a crossword puzzle where half the clues are missing, the alphabet is unfamiliar, and the subject matter could be anything from grain shipments to creation myths. Context is everything. The Rosetta Stone worked because it repeated the same decree in 3 scripts, including well-known ancient Greek. But most undeciphered languages stand alone, their cultural frameworks long crumbled to dust. Even with modern tools like machine learning, progress is painstaking. A single misinterpreted symbol can send scholars down a dead end for decades, and yet the stakes couldn't be higher. Cracking one of these scripts isn't just academic glory, it's recovering an entire worldview. The Indus Valley script, found on seals across ancient South Asia, might reveal how one of humanity's first urban societies organized itself. Proto-Elamite, used in Iran 5,000 years ago, could rewrite the story of early commerce. Every undeciphered script is a time capsule waiting to burst open, and the contents might shake our understanding of history to its core. That's the real allure, the chance to meet the past on its own terms, to let the dead speak again. The question isn't just can we read them, it's what will they tell us when we finally do. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone wasn't just luck. It was a collision of history, war, and sheer human curiosity. Picture this: Napoleon's soldiers, digging fortifications in the dusty Egyptian town of Rashid, stumble upon a broken slab of black rock. At first glance, it might have seemed like just another piece of rubble, but etched into its surface were three versions of the same decree, written in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. In that moment, the stone became a linguistic time machine, offering the first real hope of cracking a code that had baffled scholars for over 1,000 years. Before Champollion's breakthrough, hieroglyphs were often dismissed as mystical symbols, a secret language of priests rather than a functional writing system. Early attempts at translation were full of wild guesses. Some scholars even believed each hieroglyph represented an entire philosophical concept. Then came Champollion, a linguistic prodigy who realized hieroglyphs were far more sophisticated. They mixed phonetic signs like an alphabet with ideograms that conveyed meaning directly. His eureka, a moment came when he recognized that the oval shapes called cartouches encircled royal names, and from there he pieced together the sounds of long-forgotten pharaohs. But here's the haunting question: without the Rosetta Stone, would we still be staring at temple walls, utterly clueless? The stone provided something rare: a parallel text, a direct comparison between known and unknown scripts. Most undeciphered languages don't have that luxury. Imagine if the Greek portion had eroded away, leaving only the hieroglyphs and demotic. Would Champollion have ever broken the code? It's a reminder of how fragile our connection to the past really is. One missing artifact, one war that never happened, and entire civilizations might have remained mute forever. Yet the Rosetta Stone's legacy goes beyond Egypt. It became the gold standard for decipherment, proving that even the most impenetrable scripts can fall if you find the right key. That's why scholars still scour the world for bilingual inscriptions. Another Rosetta Stone could be hiding in a Mesopotamian ruin or an Andean temple, waiting to unleash another flood of lost knowledge. Because in the end, every translated word isn't just a victory over a puzzle, it's a voice pulled back from oblivion. Michael Ventris didn't set out to rewrite history. He was just a teenager fascinated by ancient scripts when he first saw the strange symbols of Linear B. For decades, scholars had assumed it was the lost language of the Minoans, a script so mysterious it might never be understood. But Ventris, an architect by trade with no formal training in linguistics, approached the problem like a blueprint. He meticulously catalogued every symbol, searching for patterns others had missed. What he discovered would shatter assumptions. Linear B wasn't Minoan at all. It was Greek. The breakthrough came when Ventris noticed recurring groups of symbols that seemed to correspond to place names, familiar locations like Knossos and Pylos. Like a detective piecing together fragments of a torn letter, he reconstructed syllables, then words, until the ancient ledger entries finally made sense. These weren't esoteric religious texts, they were inventory lists, olive oil, chariot wheels, even offerings to the gods, all recorded with bureaucratic precision. Suddenly, the Mycenaean world came alive in a way no one had imagined, yet the decipherment raised as many questions as it answered. Why did the Mycenaeans borrow a Minoan script to write their own language? Was it a colonial imposition or a practical adaptation? And why did Linear B disappear when the Bronze Age collapsed? The script's simplicity, each symbol representing a syllable rather than an individual sound, made it efficient for record-keeping but clumsy for poetry or philosophy. Perhaps that's why it vanished, leaving later Greeks to reinvent writing from scratch with the alphabet we know today. Linear B's story is a testament to how much we underestimate ancient bureaucracies. Behind every undeciphered script, there might be equally mundane truths: tax receipts, shipping manifests, laundry lists. But even the driest records can illuminate vanished worlds. Imagine what we'd learn if we could read Proto-Elamite's clay tablets or the Indus Valley's stamped seals. Would they reveal trade routes, treaties, or tales of famine and triumph? The silence of these unbroken codes taunts us, because history isn't just made by kings and battles. Sometimes it's written by clerks with styluses, counting jars of honey in forgotten palaces. Of all the unreadable texts in history, none taunt scholars quite like the Voynich Manuscript. This strange, palm-sized book from the early 15th century is filled with swirling, botanical illustrations of plants that don't exist, astrological charts with no recognizable constellations, and page after page of delicate, looping symbols that form no known alphabet. It's as if someone plucked a book from another dimension and dropped it into our world. Even more baffling, every serious attempt to crack it, from World War II codebreakers to modern machine learning, has hit a wall. What makes the Voynich so uniquely stubborn? Unlike Linear B or Egyptian hieroglyphs, it has no bilingual key, no parallel text to compare it to. Some believe it's a sophisticated cipher, hiding its true meaning behind layers of encryption. Others argue it's glossolalia, meaningless scribbles meant to mimic writing, perhaps as a medieval con artist's prank. But the manuscript's internal consistency suggests something far more deliberate. The script follows patterns of real language, with certain symbols appearing only at the start of words, others clustering like suffixes. Even the illustrations seem systematic, with sections devoted to herbs, astronomy, and oddly ritualistic scenes of women bathing in interconnected pools. Then there's the theory that pushes the boundaries of plausibility. Could it be written in an entirely lost language, a linguistic isolate with no surviving relatives? Some scholars point to the script's resemblance to shorthand systems of the time, while others wonder if it encodes an early constructed language like a Renaissance Esperanto. The most tantalizing clue might be the one we can't see. Carbon dating confirms the vellum is genuine, but the ink remains untested. If it hides even a single word in a known tongue, that could be the thread to unravel the whole mystery. Yet after centuries of scrutiny, the Voynich still guards its secrets. Artificial intelligence has parsed its structure, identifying possible nouns and verbs, but without knowing what any word actually means. The result is like hearing a conversation through a wall, muffled just out of reach. Maybe that's why it captivates us so deeply. Unlike other undeciphered scripts tied to known cultures, the Voynich exists in a vacuum, a puzzle with no context, no fingerprints. It could be a doctor's coded notes on herbal remedies, a mystic's ramblings, or an alchemist's recipe for something unimaginable. Until someone finds the key, if it even exists, the book remains a Rorschach test for the ages, reflecting back whatever theory we project onto it. And perhaps that's the point. Some secrets aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to keep us wondering. Rongorongo isn't just a script, it's a ghost story etched into wood. Imagine the shock of 19th century missionaries arriving on Easter Island and finding these intricate symbols carved into tablets, a writing system flourishing in isolation at the edge of the world. Here was proof that a culture famous for its towering stone heads had also developed one of humanity's rarest treasures, an independent invention of writing. But the very people who recorded this discovery would soon become accomplices in its near destruction. Convinced the tablets were pagan artifacts, missionaries burned most of them, leaving fewer than 24 survivors. Today, those fragile remnants are scattered across museums, their glyphs fishhooks, frigate birds, crouching figures frozen mid-sentence, as if the island's scribes were interrupted mid-thought. What makes Rongorongo so tantalizing is its sheer improbability. Polynesia had no other writing systems. This wasn't a borrowed tradition, but something born entirely on Easter Island. Some scholars argue the glyphs aren't true writing but proto-writing, a symbolic system for recording genealogies or rituals without full linguistic complexity. Yet the tablets show staggering consistency. Certain glyphs repeat in clusters, suggesting grammatical rules. Lines alternate direction in a method called reverse boustrophedon, where the reader twists the tablet like a pendulum, following the symbols as they snake back and forth. This isn't random doodling, it's deliberate, sophisticated, and achingly close to being understood. The island's oral traditions might hold clues. Elders spoke of Tangata Rongorongo, the men who recite, who could chant the tablet's contents from memory. But the last of these experts died in the 1860s, taking their knowledge with them. Modern linguists have tried reviving fragmented chants, searching for echoes of the script's meaning, like trying to reconstruct a symphony from a single note. One theory suggests the tablets record creation myths or astronomical events, perhaps even the Birdman cult's rituals. Others believe they're practical records, tallying tributes or crops. Without a bilingual key or living tradition, every interpretation remains a guess wrapped in enigma. The tragedy of Rongorongo isn't just the loss of words, it's the loss of worldview. This script was the island's memory, its way of speaking across generations. When the tablets burned, it wasn't just writing that vanished, it was an entire people's dialogue with their own past. And that's what haunts us. Other undeciphered scripts tease us with the possibility of future breakthroughs, but Rongorongo feels like a door slammed shut by history itself. Yet in those surviving glyphs there's fragile hope. Maybe one day a forgotten chant will surface or a new analysis will reveal hidden patterns. Until then, these wooden fragments whisper the same urgent lesson: knowledge is never permanent. It can vanish in smoke, leaving behind only the shadow of what we once knew. Cretan hieroglyphs stand as silent witnesses to a world we can barely glimpse, a script carved into clay seals and stone tablets over 3,600 years ago, older even than Linear A. These intricate symbols, with their spirals, animal figures, and geometric shapes, feel strangely alive, as if they might start whispering secrets any moment. But unlike their Egyptian counterparts, they've refused to give up their meaning. The problem: there's simply not enough to go on. With fewer than 200 inscriptions surviving, most no larger than a postage stamp, the script exists in fragments, like a jigsaw puzzle with most of its pieces missing. What makes these hieroglyphs so frustratingly enigmatic is their isolation. The Minoans, that vibrant civilization of bull leapers and labyrinthine palaces, left no Rosetta Stone to bridge the gap between their symbols and a known language. Without a bilingual text, every attempted decipherment is a shot in the dark. Some scholars believe the script was purely administrative, used to track goods in the bustling storerooms of Knossos. Others see religious significance in the repeating motifs of eyes, hands, and stylized animals, perhaps invocations to deities or protective charms. Then there's the boldest theory, that Cretan hieroglyphs represent Europe's first true writing system, predating even Greek. If true, it would rewrite the story of how literacy spread across the continent. The symbols themselves are a study in duality. Some clearly depict objects: a boat, a dagger, a bee suggesting a pictorial element. Yet others are abstract, arranged in sequences that hint at phonetic values like syllables or sounds. This hybrid nature mirrors the Minoans themselves, a culture caught between the symbolic and the practical, the sacred and the mundane. But without more samples, we're left with tantalizing maybes. Could a single overlooked tablet in a storeroom somewhere hold the key? Or will these hieroglyphs remain forever mute, their stories locked behind a door we've yet to find the handle for? What's haunting is the realization that this isn't just a linguistic puzzle, it's a cultural black hole. The Minoans influenced everything from Greek mythology to Mediterranean trade, yet their earliest writings are a closed book. Imagine if we could read them. Would they describe the eruption of Thera, the rise of their seafaring empire, or the rituals of the snake goddess? Every undeciphered symbol is a breath held in suspense, a voice waiting to be heard across the millennia. Until then, these hieroglyphs stand as a reminder. Some of history's most profound conversations are still unfolding, even in silence. The Indus Valley script is like a conversation frozen mid-sentence, 4,000 symbols etched into tiny seals and pottery shards, each one a stubborn lock without a key. These aren't just random marks, they're precise, standardized, appearing across a civilization that stretched from modern-day Pakistan to India over 4,000 years ago. But here's the maddening part. The longest continuous text we've found is just 26 symbols. Imagine trying to decode English with nothing but a handful of street signs and no dictionary. That's the puzzle scholars face. What makes the Indus script so controversial is the debate over whether it's even a true language at all. Some argue the symbols are proto-writing, a system for recording trade goods or ownership like an ancient barcode. Others point to the script's complexity, with symbols combining in patterns that suggest grammar, even poetry. The seals themselves add to the mystery. Many depict animals like unicorns, yes, unicorns and bulls alongside the cryptic symbols. Were these names of merchants, prayers to gods, or just labels for jars of grain? Without a Rosetta Stone-like bilingual text, every theory hangs in the air, untestable. Enter the machines. In recent years, computational linguists have thrown artificial intelligence at the problem, training algorithms to analyze the script structure. The results are tantalizing but inconclusive. Computers can confirm the symbols aren't random, they follow rules, repeating in sequences that hint at language. But without knowing what any symbol means, it's like listening to a song where you can recognize the rhythm but not the lyrics. One breakthrough came when researchers noticed similarities between Indus symbols and later scripts from the region, suggesting a faint cultural thread. Yet even this is a whisper, not a shout. The stakes are enormous. If deciphered, the Indus script could rewrite the early history of South Asia. This was a civilization with planned cities, advanced drainage systems, and thriving trade networks, but no evidence of kings, wars, or monuments to conquest. Were they a peaceful, bureaucratic society, a theocracy? Their silence is deafening and time is running out. Many Indus sites are crumbling, their tablets and seals looted or lost. Every artifact that disappears takes with it a potential clue, another fragment of a voice we've yet to hear. The tragedy isn't just that we can't read them, it's that they might have something profound to say, and we're just not listening hard enough. Proto-Elamite script stares back at us like a cipher from the dawn of civilization itself. These slender, wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets over 5,000 years ago in what's now Iran are among humanity's first experiments with writing, older than Babylonian cuneiform, older than the pyramids. Yet unlike those later systems, Proto-Elamite remains stubbornly silent. The symbol's rows of stylized ox heads, grain stalks, and abstract lines look almost mathematical, as if they were meant for accounting rather than storytelling. And that might be exactly what they were. What's fascinating isn't just the script's age, but its abrupt disappearance. After flourishing for just 2 centuries around 3100 BC, it vanished without a trace, replaced by Linear Elamite, a script we can partially read. Why the sudden shift? Some scholars believe Proto-Elamite collapsed under its own complexity, a bureaucratic tool that grew too cumbersome for daily use. Others suspect invasion or drought disrupted the society that created it. But the real mystery lies in those symbols. Without a bilingual key like the Rosetta Stone, every attempt to crack the code hits the same wall. We can guess what these tablets record, but we can't know. The clues we do have are tantalizing. Many tablets bear numerical notations alongside symbols, suggesting inventories of livestock, grain, or labor. One recurring glyph resembles a human head with a distinctive bun. Could this be a unit of measurement or even a tax obligation? The script's precision hints at a highly organized society, one that needed writing not for poetry or kingship, but for the raw mechanics of trade and governance. This wasn't scribes celebrating pharaohs, it was accountants tracking jars of oil. Yet Proto-Ilamite simplicity might be its greatest riddle. Later cuneiform evolved to capture sounds, adapting to multiple languages. But Proto-Elamite stayed frozen in abstraction, a system so tied to its original purpose that it couldn't adapt. Was it a dead end in writing's evolution, or a missing link between early tokens and true literacy? The answer could rewrite the story of how and why humans first began to mark their thoughts in clay. Perhaps the most haunting question isn't what Proto-Elamite says, but who it represents. These tablets were found in the ruins of Susa, an ancient crossroads where Mesopotamian and Iranian cultures collided. Were the scribes record keepers for a powerful elite or ordinary merchants tracking their wares? Every undeciphered symbol is a person whose voice we've lost, a bureaucrat, a trader, maybe even a poet hiding secrets in plain sight. Until we crack this code, an entire chapter of human innovation remains half told, its pages filled with symbols we can see but still can't hear. The Phaistos disk spins through history like a linguistic comet, bright, baffling, and gone before we could grasp it. Unearthed in 1908 in the Minoan Palace of Phaistos, this palm-sized clay disc is covered with spiraling symbols, each one pressed into the clay with individual stamps. Flowers, birds, human figures, and abstract marks march in neat rows, twisting inward like a hypnotic whirlpool of meaning. But here's what keeps scholars awake at night. We've never found anything else like it. No duplicates, no related texts, not even a single matching symbol elsewhere in the ancient world. It's as if this disc fell from the sky, a message in a bottle with no ocean. What could these symbols possibly convey? Theories range from the practical to the fantastical. Some argue it's a religious hymn, meant to be read aloud in rituals, with the spiral representing a cyclical chant. Others see a celestial calendar tracking lunar phases or agricultural seasons. The most tantalizing suggestion that it's a diplomatic treaty or a royal proclamation, stamped with official authority, a Bronze Age wax seal without the accompanying parchment. But without context, every guess feels like throwing darts in the dark. Even the disc's authenticity has been questioned. Could it be an elaborate hoax? The precision of the stamped symbols suggests otherwise, but the lack of parallels is unsettling. If genuine, it might represent a writing system so niche, so fleeting, that it vanished without a trace. The disc's isolation is what makes it so haunting. Linear and Cretan hieroglyphs at least appear across multiple artifacts, offering crumbs of context. But the Phaistos disc is a solo act, a linguistic island. Modern attempts to decipher it hit the same wall. Without knowing the language behind the symbols, statistical analysis can't distinguish between meaningful patterns and random noise. Computer algorithms have parsed the symbols' distribution, noting repetitions that might hint at grammar, but like the Voynich Manuscript, it's a locked door with no keyhole. Perhaps the greatest clue lies in the disc's very strangeness. The fact that it was stamped, not carved or painted, suggests a desire for replication, as if it were meant to be mass-produced. Was it a prototype for a writing system that never caught on, a failed experiment in standardization, or something more personal like a king's seal or a merchant's trademark? The silence is deafening, and yet that silence speaks volumes about how fragile our connection to the past really is. One fired clay disc survives the millennia, while everything that might explain it turns to dust. The Phaistos disc doesn't just defy translation, it defies time itself, spinning endlessly between mystery and meaning, daring us to listen. The Etruscan language feels like a reflection in a broken mirror, fragments of clarity surrounded by distortion. Here was a people who shaped early Rome, taught its architects, influenced its religion, even lent the city its ceremonial purple robes. Yet their words slipped through history's fingers, leaving behind inscriptions we can sound out but rarely understand. The irony is palpable. We recognize their alphabet borrowed from the Greeks, yet the meanings behind those letters dance just out of reach. Tombs tell part of the story. Walk through the necropolises of Tarquinia or Servitory, and the walls whisper in vivid frescoes, banquets, dancers, underworld demons accompanied by captions in elegant Etruscan script. Some phrases leap into focus. This is the tomb of Lathea, or sacred to Tinia, their sky god. But dig deeper and the language resists. A burial urn might bear the name Aunt Velemna, but was he a warrior, a merchant, or a priest? Without context, these labels are name tags on empty chairs. Bilingual inscriptions offer flickers of hope. The Pyrgi tablets, gold foil sheets etched with Etruscan and Phoenician, confirm trade ties with Carthage and name the goddess Astarte. Yet most translations rely on guesswork. Take the Zagreb mummy wrappings, a linen scroll reused in Egypt that preserves the longest Etruscan text ever found. It's likely a religious calendar detailing rituals month by month, but the specifics blur like ink in rain. Was it a guide to sacrifices or prophecies for harvests? Even the Etruscans' own borrowing, like the Roman gladiator games, adapted from their funeral rites, hint at a culture both familiar and alien. Why did their language fade? Rome's rise played executioner. As Etruria fell under Roman rule, Latin became the tongue of power and commerce, yet Etruscan clung to life in surprising ways. Emperors like Claudius wrote Etruscan histories now lost, and augurs still consulted Etruscan texts on lightning omens centuries after the culture's political collapse. Its death wasn't sudden but slow, like a language sinking into quicksand. The cruelest twist, we may never grasp their literature. Roman sources mention Etruscan plays and philosophical texts all vanished. Imagine if just one survived: a comedy, a hymn, a chronicle. Would it reveal them as pragmatic traders or deep thinkers? Their tombs suggest a people obsessed with the afterlife, yet their few deciphered words pulse with life's vibrancy. Zichai, meaning right, or clan, son. These aren't relics but echoes of voices that once argued, joked, and prayed. The Etruscans remind us that even the mightiest cultures can become whispers, their fullest stories buried not in earth but in time. Deep in the humid lowlands of Mexico's Gulf Coast, the Olmecs carved their legacy into stone, not just with colossal heads, but with cryptic symbols that might hold the key to a startling claim: the first writing in the Americas. The Cascajal block, a slab of serpentine discovered in the 1990s, bears 62 glyphs arranged in rows, some resembling insects, corn, or throne-like structures. Dated to around 900 BC, it predates Maya writing by centuries. But is this truly writing or something more primal? The debate cuts to the heart of what we even define as a script. Unlike the Maya's elaborate syllabic system, Olmec glyphs are stark and minimal. Some scholars argue they're proto-writing symbols conveying concepts rather than fluent language like early Sumerian tokens. Yet the Cascajal block's symbols repeat in patterns that suggest syntax even if we can't decipher it. One tantalizing glyph shows a bird with a distinctive crest, echoing later Maya signs for rulership. Could this be a prototype for the sacred glyphs of Kapan and Palinque, or is it a false dawn, a system that flickered out before it could fully form? The stakes are monumental. If Olmec glyphs are true writing, it means Mesoamerican literacy didn't begin with the Maya but was inherited, like the Olympian gods borrowing from the Titans. The Olmecs already gifted the region monumental art, ball games, and the concept of zero. Writing would crown them as the intellectual architects of the Americas. But skeptics point to the scarcity of evidence. Just a dozen inscriptions survive, many fragmentary. Without a longer text or bilingual clue, the cascadal block might remain a linguistic island, a single page torn from a lost library. What makes this puzzle so gripping is the cultural ripple effect. The Olmecs traded jade across Mesoamerica, spreading ideas as surely as goods. If their glyphs traveled too, they could be the hidden roots of Zapotec, Isthmian, and Maya scripts. Imagine an alternate history where the cascadal block had been found alongside a bilingual stele, its meanings laid bare. Would we speak of Olmec literature today? Or is their writing like their colossal heads, monumental yet mute, a language that chose stone over speech? Until more artifacts emerge, these glyphs remain a frontier, daring us to cross into the Olmec's world of jaguar priests and rubber-treed cities, where the first New World scribes might have pressed stylus to clay, whispering across 3,000 years. Linear is more than a script, it's a ghost language, a shadow cast by the Minoans that refuses to materialize into meaning. Found on clay tablets scattered across Crete and the Aegean, these symbols share shapes with their descendant Linear B, but the words they form belong to a world we've never heard. Imagine knowing every letter of an alphabet but none of the words. That's the maddening puzzle scholars face. While Linear B cracked open the Mycenaean world, Linear A remains a locked door, its contents tantalizingly out of reach. What makes this script so elusive? Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs or Mesopotamian cuneiform, Linear A has no bilingual Rosetta Stone, no parallel text to act as a linguistic bridge. The tablets themselves offer only whispers, lists of commodities like olives, figs, and wine, alongside numerals and cryptic notations. Some symbols recur like musical refrains, suggesting grammatical patterns or recurring terms, but without context, they're just shapes on clay. The language behind them could be a forgotten branch of Indo-European, a relative of Etruscan's enigmatic isolate, or something entirely unique, a linguistic dead end snuffed out by time. Theories abound, each more speculative than the last. A handful of scholars argue for links to Luwian, a tongue spoken in ancient Anatolia, pointing to shared symbols and trade routes. Others see hints of a pre-Greek Pelasgian language, a substratum that once rippled across the Aegean. Then there's the wild card. Could Linear encode a sacred language used exclusively for rituals or elite communication? The Minoans left behind frescoes of bull leapers and snake goddesses, but no royal annals or epic poetry. If their writing was purely administrative, what stories have we lost to bureaucratic brevity? New tools are probing the mystery. Artificial intelligence has begun analyzing Linear A's structure, searching for statistical patterns invisible to the human eye. Early attempts suggest the script's syllabic nature might align with known language families, but without semantic anchors, even machine learning hits a wall. Archaeologists still dream of unearthing a bilingual inscription, perhaps a treaty tablet or a votive offering with parallel texts. Until then, every translation attempt is like reassembling a vase from scattered shards, never quite sure if the pieces belong together. The stakes are higher than academic curiosity. Deciphering Linear A would rip away the curtain on Europe's first high civilization, revealing how the Minoans governed their maritime empire, worshipped their deities, or even why their palaces burned. Were they overrun by Mycenaeans, toppled by natural disasters? The answers might lie in those unreadable lines. For now, Linear A stands as both a monument and a taunt, a reminder that some voices from the past won't speak until we learn to listen in a language we've yet to understand. The Behistun Inscription isn't just carved into rock, it's carved into legend. Picture this, a sheer 300-foot cliff in western Iran, its face dominated by a monumental relief of King Darius the Great towering over bound rebels, his foot planted triumphantly on one. Beneath him, the same proclamation repeats in three ancient scripts: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. It's as if Darius knew future generations would need a key. But for centuries, the message might as well have been written in the wind. The cliff was nearly inaccessible, the script a tangled forest of wedges and lines. Then came Henry Rawlinson, a British officer with a taste for danger and linguistics. In the 1830s, he scaled that cliff, dangling from ropes and makeshift scaffolds, painstakingly copying every symbol by hand. One misstep, and he'd have plunged into oblivion, taking Mesopotamia's secrets with him. What makes Behistun so extraordinary isn't just its trilingual text, it's how perfectly it mirrors the Rosetta Stone's magic. Rawlinson realized Old Persian was the linchpin, the easiest of the three scripts to crack. Once he deciphered it, Elamite and Babylonian fell like dominoes. Suddenly, the entire library of cuneiform tablets, royal decrees, epic poems, even grocery lists began to speak. The inscription itself was Darius's propaganda, boasting of his victories, but its unintended gift was far greater. It became a Rosetta Stone for an entire civilization. Yet Behistun story raises a thrilling question. How many other multilingual inscriptions are still out there, waiting on some remote cliff or buried in temple ruins? Imagine stumbling upon a Maya-Egyptian bilingual stele, or an Indus Valley seal with parallel scripts. Every undiscovered key could rewrite history. Rawlinson's climb reminds us that decipherment isn't just about brains, it's about guts. The next breakthrough might require scaling a jungle-choked pyramid or diving to a sunken city. The real lesson of Behistun: some doors won't open gently. They demand obsession, risk, and a touch of recklessness. Because languages don't surrender their secrets to the timid, they wait for the stubborn, the curious, the ones willing to dangle from cliffs just to hear a whisper from the past. And who knows, the next great decipherment might be one audacious climb away. Mayan glyphs didn't just hide in the jungle. They hid in plain sight, etched into temple walls and stelae for centuries, while scholars dismissed them as mere ornamentation. To the untrained eye, those intricate swirls and animal-headed figures looked like artistic flourishes, not a sophisticated writing system. The irony is staggering. The Maya left behind thousands of inscriptions, more than any other ancient Mesoamerican culture, yet their words were silenced by colonial bias and academic stubbornness. Early explorers couldn't fathom that indigenous peoples had developed a script as complex as Egyptian hieroglyphs. It took a handful of relentless outsiders, linguists, archaeologists, even a teenage prodigy, to shatter those assumptions and finally let the Maya speak for themselves. The breakthrough came when scholars realized Mayan glyphs weren't one system but two, interwoven like threads in a tapestry. Some symbols represented whole words, logograms like the glyph for jaguar, a snarling cat face. Others stood for syllables, allowing scribes to spell out names or foreign terms phonetically. This hybrid system gave the Maya astonishing flexibility. They could record dynastic triumphs with monumental grandeur or scribble playful puns on pottery. Take the glyph for cacao, a bean so precious it was currency. In one context, it's a literal depiction of the pod. In another, it's broken into phonetic parts, kakawa, a linguistic echo of the word sound. This duality made the script beautiful and brutally hard to crack. Preconceptions weren't the only obstacle. Spanish Bishop Diego de Landa in the 16th century famously burned dozens of Mayan codices, erasing untold knowledge. But his own clumsy attempts to transcribe Mayan syllables, though flawed, ironically became a key centuries later. In the 1950s, Russian linguist Yuri Norzov noticed something revolutionary in Landa's notes. The glyphs weren't just ideas, they captured sounds. This insight, combined with later work by David Stewart, who deciphered his first glyph at age 12, unlocked the script's phonetic core. Suddenly, names of kings like Pakal the Great leaped from stelae, and rituals described in the Dresden Codex revealed advanced astronomical calculations. Now, we know these glyphs hold everything from royal propaganda to marketplace gossip. A vase might proclaim a king's divine right, while another jokes about a drunk noble. There's even a glyph for toothache, proof that Maya scribes recorded the mundane alongside the majestic. But the real revelation is how recent this decipherment is. For all our tech, it took human creativity to see past the art to the language beneath. That's the Maya's final lesson. Sometimes the past isn't lost. It's just waiting for us to look with new eyes. Demotic script was the pulse of everyday life in ancient Egypt, a fluid, cursive hand that captured the voices of merchants, lovers, and storytellers far more often than the formal hieroglyphs chiseled into temple walls. While hieroglyphs demanded the precision of a sculptor, demotic flowed like quick ink across papyrus, a practical script for people in a hurry. Tax receipts, marriage contracts, even playful love poems, all were scribbled in this efficient shorthand that dominated Egypt for over 1,000 years. Yet today, demotic remains the overlooked middle child of Egyptology, sandwiched between the glamour of hieroglyphs and the scholarly focus on Coptic. Why does this script, which chronicled the heartbeat of an entire civilization, still whisper in the shadows? The contrast between hieroglyphs and demotic couldn't be starker. Hieroglyphs were monumental, carved in stone to last eternity. Demotic was alive, scratched onto pottery shards or hastily unfurled scrolls, a script for the living. A single demotic document might record a farmer's loan, a widow's plea to the gods, or a merchant's complaint about delayed shipments, mundane, perhaps, but priceless windows into the world beyond pharaohs and pyramids. Take the Brooklyn Papyrus, a medical text filled with remedies for scorpion stings and eye infections, written in demotic's looping strokes. These weren't spells for immortality, but practical fixes for people who hurt. Deciphering demotic holds a thrilling promise, the chance to hear ordinary Egyptians speak. Hieroglyphic inscriptions boast of royal conquests, but demotic papyri preserve courtroom dramas, divorce settlements, even jokes. The Cairo Papyrus, for instance, includes a playful riddle. What is sweetest to a man in his house? The answer, his wife, when he's happy with her. This is history without the filter of power, raw and unfiltered. Yet demotic's very informality makes it a nightmare to decode. Scribes often personalized their handwriting, abbreviating words or running letters together like a doctor's prescription. One scribe's contract might look like another's grocery list. The neglect of demotic is more than an academic oversight, it's a cultural blind spot. While museums display golden sarcophagi, crates of demotic papyri lie unread in storage, their fragile fibers hiding lawsuits, hymns, or perhaps the first draft of a forgotten story. A single scrap might reveal how a weaver negotiated wages or how a child practiced letters in the dust. These aren't just texts, they're echoes of lives lived in the spaces between history's grand narratives. Every unrolled demotic scroll is a door cracked open, waiting for someone to step through and listen. Ugaritic script feels like the missing link in the alphabet's origin story, a bridge between the cumbersome syllabic systems of Mesopotamia and the sleek, adaptable scripts that would follow. Unearthed in the ruins of the ancient city of Ugarit on Syria's coast, these wedge-shaped symbols, pressed into clay tablets around 1400 BC, represent one of history's quiet revolutions. Unlike the hundreds of signs required for cuneiform or hieroglyphs, Ugaritic distilled writing down to just 30 symbols, each representing a consonant. This wasn't just an evolution, it was a stroke of genius that would echo across millennia. What makes Ugaritic so extraordinary is how fully it lets us eavesdrop on a Bronze Age world. Deciphered in the 1930s thanks to its striking parallels to Hebrew and Phoenician, the script spills secrets across genres. There are epic poems about the godball battling sea monsters, legal contracts detailing the price of a house, 300 shekels of silver including its doors, even diplomatic letters complaining about unruly merchants. One tablet addressed to the king of Ugarit from a Hittite overlord snaps, "Why do your traders keep overcharging my people? These aren't fragments of myth or ritual, they're the paperwork of a bustling port city where writing had become as everyday as bartering for spices. But Ugaritic's real legacy lies in its influence. While it borrowed cuneiform's wedge-shaped style from Mesopotamia, its structure was radically different, a true alphabet where each sign matched a sound. Scholars now believe it directly inspired the Phoenician script, which would later spread across the Mediterranean, morphing into Greek, Latin, and eventually our own ABCs. Imagine that, the same concept of efficient, accessible writing that let a Syrian merchant record a shipment of olive oil also laid the groundwork for everything from Shakespeare's sonnets to subway graffiti. The irony, Ugaritic itself died with the city's destruction around 1200 BC, likely in the wave of invasions that toppled Bronze Age empires. But its DNA survived, like a language hidden in plain sight, its principles simplicity, adaptability, the power of a small set of symbols to capture infinite ideas outlasted the civilization that birthed it. That's the paradox of writing's history. Sometimes the most transformative breakthroughs aren't the ones that shout from monuments, but the ones whispered on clay tablets in a merchant's office, waiting for the right moment to change the world. Oracle bone script is where history cracks open literally. Picture a Shang dynasty priest 3,000 years ago pressing a red-hot bronze rod into the shoulder blade of an ox or the underside of a turtle shell. The bone splinters with a sharp pop, and in those fissures the priest seeks answers from the ancestors. Will the harvest flourish? Is the king's illness an omen? Then, with a steady hand, he etches the question into the bone itself. Along with the cryptic reply, the gods seem to whisper through the fractures. These oracle bones, discovered by chance in 1899 near Anyang, aren't just relics, they're the earliest known Chinese writing, the ancestral heartbeat of every character still in use today. What's astonishing isn't just their age, but how recognizable they are. Trace the modern character for horse Chinese letter back to its oracle bone form, and you'll see the same arched neck, the same four legs in motion. Sun Chinese letter was a circle with a dot inside, like a child's drawing of the sky. Even abstract ideas were rendered with poetic clarity. To listen, Chinese letter showed an ear beside a mouth, as if sound itself could be carved into bone. This wasn't just writing, it was artistry fused with divination, a system where every stroke bridged heaven and earth. The content of these inscriptions pulls back the curtain on a world steeped in ritual and urgency. One bone records a king's plea to avert a toothache. Yes, even rulers feared the dentist. Another frets over invading barbarians, while a third meticulously documents a lunar eclipse, proof that Shang astronomers tracked celestial events with startling precision. But the real magic lies in the gaps. Unlike later histories written by victors, oracle bones capture raw, unfiltered moments of doubt. When a priest asks, "Will the queen's childbirth be safe?" Or, "Why has the rain abandoned us?" You're hearing voices stripped of grandeur, human in their vulnerability. Deciphering these texts was its own epic. Early scholars like Wang Yang recognized the script's importance when they spotted dragon bones, sold in pharmacies, ground-up fragments prized as medicine, unknowingly pulverizing history. The painstaking work of matching bone fragments to modern characters revealed a linguistic thread stretching back millennia. Yet mysteries linger. Over half of the 5,000 known oracle bone characters remain untranslated, their meanings lost like smoke from a diviner's fire. The legacy of oracle bone script is everywhere, not just in modern Hanzi, but in how China's relationship with writing began. This wasn't a tool for kings to monument themselves, but a desperate hotline to the divine. Every crack was a conversation, every character a plea or a thanksgiving. To read these bones today is to witness the birth of a civilization's voice, one scorched question at a time. And somewhere in those unread glyphs, there might still be answers waiting not from the gods, but from the hands that carved them. The Dresden Codex is nothing short of a miracle. One of just 4 Mayan books to survive the Spanish conquest, a fragile sheet of bark paper folded like an accordion, its vivid red and black glyphs whispering across 8 centuries. Unlike the austere records of other ancient cultures, this codex is a riot of artistry and precision, where jaguar-headed gods dance beside columns of numbers so accurate they could predict eclipses centuries in advance. Imagine the odds. While Diego de Landa's bonfires consumed thousands of Maya codices in the 1600s, this single volume somehow slipped through the flames, spared by luck or fate to become our clearest window into a lost scientific tradition. What sets the Dresden Codex apart isn't just its survival, but the breathtaking sophistication of its contents. Flip through its 74 pages, and you'll find not just myths, but mathematics, lunar tables pinpointing eclipses within minutes, Venus charts tracking the planet's cycles with eerie precision. The Maya didn't just observe the stars, they calculated time in units spanning millions of days, their scribes weaving astronomy into the very fabric of ritual. One section even details a zodiac of 13 constellations, with the celestial snake stretching across the Milky Way. This wasn't mere record-keeping, it was a fusion of science and spirituality where numbers held divine power. Yet for all its brilliance, the Codex is also a haunting reminder of how much was lost. Landa's fires may have erased entire libraries, medical treatises, historical chronicles, perhaps even philosophical texts. We know Maya scribes wrote more than almanacs. Their glyphs appear on drinking cups boasting of royal feasts, on temple walls recounting wars. The Dresden Codex, for all its wonders, is just a fragment of a much larger conversation. What genius might have filled those burned pages? A manual for building their iconic pyramids, a poet's ode to the morning star. The silence is deafening. The Codex's resilience holds a poetic irony. Its very pigments, made from rare Maya blue, a color chemists still struggle to replicate, outlasted the empires that created it. Even the paper itself, crafted from beaten fig bark and coated in lime plaster, defied humidity and time. Today, it sits in a German library, a world away from the jungles where scribes once painted by torchlight. But its legacy is undeniable. Every eclipse prediction, every glyph that modern scholars painstakingly decipher, is a victory over oblivion. The Dresden Codex doesn't just record the Maya's knowledge, it proves that some voices, no matter how hard others try to silence them, refuse to stay buried. Decipherment cuts across the Saharan dunes like a secret code passed down through generations, a script so ancient its origins blur into myth, yet so alive it's now tapped out on smartphone screens. Unlike the static hieroglyphs of Egypt or the vanished ink of Demotic, these angular, geometric symbols have danced across millennia, evolving from rock carvings in the Libyan desert to Unicode-enabled text messages among the Tuareg people. Picture this: a nomadic herder in Mali writes a grocery list in Decipherment on his touchscreen, his fingertips tracing the same shapes his ancestors chiseled into stone to record battles and droughts 3,000 years ago. This isn't just survival, it's defiance. The script's resilience is a masterclass in adaptation. Originally used by Berber-speaking peoples across North Africa, Decipherment's earliest forms, Libico-Berber, appear on tombstones and cliff faces, spelling out names and prayers in stark lines that mirror the desert's harsh beauty. No Rosetta Stone unlocked its meaning. Instead, the Tuareg preserved it orally, teaching each generation to read and write as European colonizers imposed Latin and Arabic scripts around them. By the 1970s, Decipherment was fading, relegated to jewelry motifs and folk art. Then came the digital age. Activists pushed for its revival, designing fonts and keyboards that let Decipherment leap onto social media. Today, it's Morocco's co-official script, taught in schools and broadcast on news tickers, a linguistic phoenix rising from the sands. What makes Decipherment so uniquely suited for modernity? Its simplicity, with around 30 basic letters, each representing a consonant. It's as streamlined as Ugaritic was for Bronze Age traders. Vowels are often implied, making it flexible for fast typing. But the real magic lies in its cultural weight. For the Tuareg, Decipherment isn't just writing, it's identity. During rebellions against governments that banned their language, scribes smuggled pamphlets in Decipherment, turning the script into a weapon of resistance. Even its geometric purity carries meaning. Some scholars believe the symbols evolved from camel brands, a nomadic ledger system etched into livestock. The script's journey from rock to router holds a lesson for every endangered language. Preservation isn't about museums, but momentum. When Morocco recognized Decipherment in 2011, it wasn't bowing to nostalgia. It was acknowledging a living thread to Africa's pre-Arab past. Now poets compose verse in Decipherment online, kids text emojis alongside ancient glyphs, and archaeologists debate whether a newly discovered Libico-Berber engraving predicts rainfall patterns. The script bridges eras effortlessly, proving that some alphabets refuse to be buried even by centuries of wind and sand. Quipu strings dangle like unfinished sentences, their knots tightening around one of archaeology's most tantalizing mysteries. To the untrained eye, they're just bundles of dyed cords, some as slender as thread, others thick as rope, tied in intricate clusters. But to the Inca, these were the backbone of an empire, a tactile language that tracked everything from grain stocks in Cusco's storehouses to the movements of troops along the Andes. Unlike other ancient scripts etched in stone or clay, Quipus spoke through texture and tension, their very fibers carrying the weight of administration across thousands of miles. The Spanish conquistadors, baffled by this writing without letters, destroyed countless quipus as pagan artifacts. Yet a few hundred survived, their coded messages waiting like silent alarms. What makes quipus so extraordinary isn't just their function but their potential. Most scholars agree they served as numerical ledgers, the colors indicating categories: yellow for corn, red for soldiers, the knot types and positions marking quantities. The lower knots might represent units, the higher ones thousands, like an abacus frozen in time. But here's where it gets thrilling: some quipus don't fit this mold. Their knots defy arithmetic patterns, twisting in ways that suggest something far richer than accounting. Could these be narratives, poems, even royal decrees? The idea isn't far-fetched. Spanish chroniclers wrote of Inca readers who interpreted quipus aloud, their fingers tracing knots like braille, reciting histories and laws from memory. If true, these strings might be the closest thing to Andean literature we'll ever have. The hunt for a Quipu Rosetta stone keeps scholars racing. One tantalizing clue emerged in 2016. A colonial-era manuscript from Peru appeared to pair a Spanish census record with a Quipu's knots, as if a scribe had begun translating. Though fragmentary, it hinted that quipus could encode names and places, not just numbers. Then there's the village of San Juan de Colata, where elders guard two quipus they insist hold ancestral letters, epistolary knots sent between rebel leaders during uprisings. Modern researchers wielding CT scans and machine learning have detected micro-patterns in these cords that suggest intentional design, not random tying. Yet without a living Quipucamayok, not mastered to guide us, the code remains half-cracked. Imagine the stories coiled inside those threads. The Inca had no written chronicles, but their quipus might have recorded everything from the construction of Machu Picchu to the sorrow of a mother losing her child to famine. Each knot could be a verb, a name, a cry for rain. The tragedy is that we're left with phantom limb syndrome, feeling the ghost of a language we can't quite grasp. Every quipu is a locked diary, its pages frayed but not yet dust. And somewhere in the tangle of those fibers, the Inca Empire might still be speaking, if only we learned to listen with more than our eyes. The hum of supercomputers now echoes in chambers once reserved for scholars hunched over parchment and magnifying glasses. Artificial intelligence has entered the decipherment arena, wielding algorithms that can spot patterns invisible to the human eye, repetitions in linear A symbols, hidden symmetries in Rongorongo's glyphs, even statistical quirks that might hint at grammatical rules. Projects like Google's DeepMind have already stunned linguists by predicting ancient text structures with eerie accuracy, reconstructing fragmented Greek inscriptions as if piecing together a cosmic jigsaw. But here's the existential question hanging over every glowing server bank. Can machines truly read, or are they just playing the world's most sophisticated game of Mad Libs? Take the case of linear A. In 2021, researchers fed its symbols into a neural network trained on known language families. The AI detected recurring clusters that might mark verb conjugations or plural forms, something a human might miss after decades of scrutiny. Yet when asked to translate a single word, the system stalled. Why? Because language isn't just math, it's culture, context, the weight of 1,000 unspoken assumptions. A machine can identify that a Minoan symbol appears frequently beside jars and grain, but can it understand whether that glyph means harvest, tribute, or the king's favorite snack? This tension between pattern recognition and true comprehension defines the AI decipherment race. For Rongorongo, algorithms have mapped glyph transitions that resemble Polynesian oral chants, suggesting the script might have been mnemonics for recited text. But without knowing the chants themselves, the output reads like sheet music for a song no one remembers. Contrast this with the crowning achievement of human decipherment. Champollion didn't just crack hieroglyphs through brute force. He immersed himself in Coptic, sensing the living pulse of Egyptian speech beneath the stone. Can an AI ever have that aha moment? The most promising and controversial approach blends silicon speed with human intuition. At MIT, teams now use machine learning to generate dozens of possible translations for Proto-Ilamite tablets, which linguists then vet using historical knowledge. It's like having a tireless intern sifting through every possible combination of a safe's lock, while experts listen for the click. Already, this hybrid method has teased out potential commodity terms in the script, linking abstract wedges to ancient words for barley and textiles. Yet even here, dangers lurk. AI thrives on data, and these scripts are the definition of sparse. Feed a model biased or flawed assumptions, and it will dutifully amplify those errors like a conspiracy theorist connecting red threads on a corkboard. What keeps scholars up at night isn't the fear of being replaced by bots, it's the fear of misinterpretation at scale. Imagine an AI deciphering the Phaistos disc as a shopping list when it's actually a hymn, or misreading Indus Valley symbols as a monarchy's edicts when they might be merchant guild price lists. The past is fragile enough without digital Chinese whispers distorting its voice. Yet for all the philosophical hand-wringing, the collaboration holds dizzying potential. In a Hamburg lab, neural networks are reconstructing burned Herculaneum scrolls by detecting ink traces invisible to microscopes. At Stanford, a model scours satellite imagery to find undiscovered Maya settlements and possibly new stelae with bilingual text. This isn't just about cracking codes, it's about expanding the very corpus of what's left to decipher. The dream, an AI Rosetta Stone, not a single bilingual text, but a system that cross-references every known script, every archaeological context, every linguistic family to propose plausible bridges between them. The bittersweet truth is that some scripts may only yield their secrets to machines precisely because they think so unlike us. Linear A structure might align with a lost Anatolian dialect through some algorithmic whim. Rongorongo's glyphs might resolve when viewed as 3D waveforms rather than 2D symbols. But the final step, the moment a string of symbols means something, will always require a human to lean in, to feel that shiver of connection across millennia. The machines might hand us the key, but we'll be the ones to turn it. And when that happens, the voices waiting on the other side won't be speaking in binary. They'll be telling stories. Deciphering an ancient script isn't just an academic challenge, it's a moral tightrope. Take the Shugborough inscription, a cryptic sequence of letters carved into an English garden monument, DOUSVAVVM. For centuries, treasure hunters and scholars alike have obsessed over its meaning, with theories ranging from Masonic codes to encrypted directions to the Holy Grail. But what if the descendants of the family who commissioned it insisted it was never meant to be solved? Suddenly, the puzzle isn't about letters, it's about who has the right to pry open a culture's private vault. This tension flares brightest when living communities are involved. In Australia, indigenous groups have fought to keep sacred symbols and stories out of academic databases, arguing that some knowledge isn't meant for outsiders. The Jabugay people, for instance, view certain rock art inscriptions as ancestral communications, not historical curiosities to be dissected in journals. When linguists published analyses without consent, it wasn't just disrespectful, it felt like theft. Contrast this with the global push to digitize Maya glyphs, where indigenous scholars now lead decipherment efforts, ensuring their ancestors' words are heard but on their own terms. The difference: one approach centers authority, the other assumes ownership. Even dead scripts aren't immune. When the Phaistos disk symbols were fed into AI without input from Cretan cultural organizations, critics called it digital colonialism, mining the past for prestige without involving the people whose heritage it represents. Museums face similar dilemmas. Displaying Rongorongo tablets might share Easter Island's legacy with the world, but does it honor the Rapa Nui's right to control their narrative? The line between preservation and exploitation blurs when the voices that once wrote these scripts aren't here to consent. Then there's the question of intent. Some texts were clearly meant for public record, like Darius's Behistun Inscription. Others, like the buried lead curse tablets of ancient Rome, were deliberately hidden spells meant for the gods' eyes only. Deciphering those feels less like scholarship and more like reading someone else's mail. The Voynich Manuscript might fall into this category. What if it's a personal cipher never meant to be cracked? The ethical weight grows heavier when you realize translation isn't neutral, it's an act of power, deciding which voices get resurrected and which stay silenced. Perhaps the most provocative idea is this: some mysteries should stay unsolved. The Cherokee syllabary, invented by Sequoyah in the early 1800s, was almost immediately used to print newspapers and laws. But what if Sequoyah had created it as a secret script for his people alone? Would we still demand the right to decode it? Respecting cultural privacy doesn't mean abandoning curiosity. It means recognizing that not all doors are meant to be kicked open. Sometimes the greatest honor we can give the past is to let it keep its secrets. After all, isn't mystery itself a kind of language, one that speaks in whispers rather than shouts? Lost languages in movies and TV shows tap into something primal. The thrill of standing at the edge of the unknown, staring at symbols that promise answers just out of reach. Think of the glowing Atlantean script in Disney's Atlantis, the lost empire pulsing with energy as if the letters themselves hold the power to resurrect a drowned civilization. Or the Inkai circular glyphs in Arrival, where linguists scramble to decode an alien language that bends time itself. These fictional scripts aren't just set dressing, they're mirrors reflecting our own obsession with cracking history's greatest codes. What makes these portrayals so irresistible? For starters, they turn decipherment into an adventure. Real-life linguists might spend decades squinting at clay tablets, but in fiction, cracking an ancient script means unlocking treasure vaults, averting apocalypses, or even rewriting reality. The Indiana Jones franchise nails this alchemy when Indy traces a hieroglyph's curve. It's not just translation, it's a ticking clock leading to the Ark of the Covenant. These stories compress the slow burn of scholarship into a spark, transforming patience into pulpy excitement. But there's a deeper layer. Fictional lost languages often serve as metaphors for connection or the lack of it. In Arrival, learning the alien's language literally rewires the protagonist's brain, forcing her to perceive time non-linearly. It's a dazzling twist on the real-world Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, the idea that language shapes thought. Similarly, Stargate's ancient glyphs aren't just plot devices. They're remnants of a progenitor culture that ties civilizations across galaxies together. These narratives ask, what if deciphering a script doesn't just reveal what a people said, but how they saw the universe? Hollywood's take isn't always rosy. For every Da Vinci Code that glorifies code-breaking, there's a Tomb Raider or the Mummy where ancient texts unleash curses, a warning that some knowledge might be better left buried. This duality echoes real-world debates. Should we disturb sacred inscriptions or repatriate looted tablets? Fiction amplifies these tensions into life or death stakes, but the core anxiety is genuine. The most fascinating tropes borrow from actual decipherment history. The National Treasure movies riff on the Rosetta Stone's bilingual trick, while Assassin's Creed games embed Proto-Ilamite-like symbols in their lore. Even Star Wars' Aurebesh alphabet owes a debt to real scripts like Linear B. These Easter eggs reward eagle-eyed fans, but they also smuggle linguistics into pop culture, sparking curiosity about the real-life mysteries that inspired them. Ultimately, these stories thrive because they're about more than words, they're about longing. The hope that somewhere, whether in a tomb or a UFO, there's a message waiting to bridge the gap between us and them, the living and the dead, the present and the past. And isn't that why we're still chasing the real-world Voynich manuscripts and Rongorongo tablets? Not just for answers, but for the moment of recognition, when a squiggle on a page stops being a mark and becomes a voice. Every archaeologist dreams of that one earth-shattering, find the artifact that cracks open a script the way the Rosetta Stone shattered the hieroglyphic code. Picture it, a farmer's plow scraping against a buried slab in Sicily, revealing Etruscan and Phoenician letters side by side, or a storm peeling back the sand near Crete's ruins, exposing a clay tablet where linear and Ugaritic numerals tally the same shipment of olive oil. These hypothetical discoveries aren't just fantasy. They're waiting in the soil, in forgotten museum storage rooms, even in private collections where no one's yet recognized their significance. Consider the domino effect of such a find. The Etruscans, whose language teases us with familiar letters but alien meanings, traded extensively with Phoenician sailors. A single bilingual treaty or merchant's ledger could bridge the gap between their script and a known Semitic tongue, pulling entire libraries of Etruscan funeral inscriptions and bronze mirrors into the light. Suddenly, we'd hear their jokes, their laws, their curses, not just names on tombs. Similarly, a linear text paired with Ugaritic, another Bronze Age script we can read, might reveal whether Minoan scribes were recording taxes or composing hymns to their snake goddess. The hunt for these keys isn't random. Archaeologists follow paper trails of trade routes and diplomatic marriages, digging where cultures collided, a promising sight. Sardinia's Nora stone, already bearing Phoenician and a mystery script, could its next fragment hold the missing half, or the sunken ports of Ugarit, where Minoan pottery shards hint at lost documents resting in the seabed. Even chance plays a role. The Rosetta Stone was reused as construction filler before a sharp-eyed soldier spotted its inscriptions, but urgency shadows this quest. Looting erases context forever, and climate change threatens coastal ruins with rising seas. The next Rosetta Stone might be a waterlogged palimpsest, its ink fading as you read this. Yet hope persists. Recent scans of sealed Egyptian coffins revealed hidden demotic scribbles on the wood beneath plaster, proof that even studied artifacts hide layers. The breakthrough could come tomorrow in a freshly excavated trash heap or a child's souvenir bought at a Cairo bazaar, because history's greatest conversations aren't over. They're just waiting for the right listener. Ancient scripts aren't just relics gathering dust in museum cases, they're time machines, each symbol a hand reaching across centuries to pull us into conversations we've been missing. Think about the last time you read a letter from someone you loved, their words carrying their voice through ink and paper. Now imagine holding a clay tablet etched by a Babylonian merchant 3,000 years ago, their careful marks recording debts or droughts, their hopes and fears pressed into the clay. These aren't just artifacts, they're shared humanity frozen in time, and every time we crack a script, we don't just solve a puzzle, we resurrect a voice. But here's the beautiful, haunting truth: not every code will be broken. Some scripts might guard their secrets forever, locked behind cultural contexts we'll never fully grasp. The Voynich Manuscript might remain an elaborate medieval inside joke we weren't meant to understand. Rongorongo's wooden tablets might keep their chants to themselves. And yet, the pursuit itself, the detective work, the wrong turns, the flashes of insight changes us. Every dead end is still a path walked, every failed attempt a testament to human curiosity. When Michael Ventris sat hunched over Linear B tablets, he wasn't just translating inventory lists, he was proving that persistence could reassemble a shattered world. What's astonishing is how much we've already reclaimed. 2 centuries ago, Egyptian hieroglyphs were considered mystical nonsense. Now we can read a pharaoh's grocery list or a teenager's love poem scribbled on a potsherd. The Maya glyphs, once dismissed as decorative doodles, now pulse with political intrigue and astronomical precision. Each breakthrough is a reminder the past isn't static. It's a conversation we're slowly rejoining, one syllable at a time. So what's next? Maybe AI will tease out patterns in Indus Valley symbols, or a storm will uncover a stele with Proto-Ilamite and Akkadian side by side. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll be the one to spot a clue everyone else missed. After all, Champollion was ridiculed before he revolutionized Egyptology, and Ventris was an amateur. The next Rosetta Stone could be hiding in your local library's forgotten archives or buried under a parking lot. That's the real magic of these scripts. They're not just about the past, they're about the future, about who might pick up the thread next. So tell us, which lost voice would you most want to hear? The Minoans' rituals, the Easter Islanders' creation myths, or something we haven't even discovered yet? The quest isn't over. It's just waiting for the next curious mind to lean in and listen.